From Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to a discussion of Pesach, bridging the generation gap. That expression, the generation gap, became particularly prominent in the 1960s when it seemed that the new generation had gone wild. A new ethos emerged, the tremendous divide between those of the values of the 50s and the great generation and those youngsters who were seeking all kinds of new freedoms. This generational divide has only grown with the recent technological booms, and here we speak not only of generational gap in terms of concepts, but also in terms of language. Very often the generational divide is an inability of one generation to speak to the next. Sometimes we speak about an issue we're very passionate about, Israel, the Holocaust, and the younger people who didn't experience the Holocaust or the state of Israel in the same way that older people did, they don't understand what the older generation is talking about. It's difficult for them to comprehend, to perceive what are they saying, to just understand the words. This idea of one generation having trouble speaking to the next is referred to in Hasidic terms as the idea that speech was in exile, that it was in golus. What does that mean? That if speech is redeemed, then it is enabled to communicate from one generation to the next. But when speech is in exile, then you can't even express what you're trying to say. It doesn't work. Now, as my friend and colleague, Professor Israel Koren from Oranim in Israel, pointed out, said that when you have a generational gap, and when you say that speech is in exile and the communication is flawed, we have to understand, is it a problem in the communicator or in the one who's communicated to? Is it in the older generation or the younger generation? We find in the Haggadah that the power of speech is compromised in two senses. The Eino Yodea Lishol, there's speech is in exile for the child. He can't articulate a question. Sometimes there are Jews today, and I suppose there have been for generations, who not only were they not involved, but they couldn't even formulate what the shaila is, what's the question that they want to ask the rabbi, they want to ask their father, they want to ask their parent, in order to try to connect with Judaism. That's one exile. But then if you look at the wicked son, it seems that the father or the mother also has a challenge in trying to communicate. Their speech is in exile. It seems like the parent doesn't know what to say. All they do is hakei shina, they smack them on their teeth, they don't know how to bring that wicked child from being wicked to being part of the Pesach experience. So sometimes the fault, so to speak, of who's failing to communicate, whose speech is in exile, could fall either on the parent or the child. But Pesach is supposed to fix all that. Pesach is supposed to be all about one generation speaking to the other. And in fact, Hasidic writers write that Pesach stands for Pesach. The Peh, the mouth, speaks. It has sicha, it has speech. And that on Pesach we begin to talk. As the Sphard-Beth points out, if we indeed are reborn at this spring holiday of Pesach, if the Jewish people were born again and were created as a nation, from a nation on Pesach, then we have to do what a child does. When you have a child, you have to teach the child Torah, and what are you supposed to teach him? Torah Tzivilana Moshe. You have to open up their mouth and fill it with words of Torah. We ask God to open our mouths and God would fill it. And therefore, at this time of year, we hope that our mouths are fitting, our mouths are able to do that speaking. Because after all, Pesach's all about the mouth. It's the Haggadah is said with the mouth. The mitzvah of matzah and maror are eaten with the mouth. So that really we're hoping that we'll have a tikkun, we'll have a repairing of the mouth and the power of speech during this holiday. But the question is, how? How are we going to bridge the gap between one generation and the next? The first principle is based on the idea of chanoch lanar al pi darko. We have to educate each child according to his or her way. And that's why we have 4 sons, 4 children. Some are wise, some are wicked, some know how to ask, they don't know how to ask, they're simple, they're smart. There are all kinds of different children, and we need to understand, we need to educate each one according to their way. Number two, we know that we need to use different styles of learning in order to convey to those who have different styles of acquiring knowledge. So we, therefore, for the tactile learner, we have a matzah, we have the charoset. We can feel those bricks and mortars. For the visual learner, we have the matzah and the maror and the Pesach. We point to it and we show them the different things. For the auditory learner, we have the whole Haggadah, speaking in words. It's all about understanding there are different types of learners. Sometimes we convey not so much with words, but with actions. When a mother particularly, father too, works really hard to make Pesach happen, to literally bring Pesach out from the potentiality to a reality in your home. Child, that's a language everyone can understand. You're killing yourself making sure that Pesach happens. That's no joke. That's something that must be very serious if the parents invest that much energy into Pesach. And that also is a language which can be successful in communicating. But there's another piece to it as well. The question is, what's the secret of communicating from one generation to the next? Rabbi Soloveitchik pointed out that the only biblical character at the beginning of the Bible where there's a grandfather speaking to a grandson is Jacob with his grandchildren, Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's children. And the question is, what did he do? How did they succeed in bridging that gap? Well, he could have failed miserably. He was looking at these children and he could have said to himself, look, they don't speak Hebrew like I do, they speak Egyptian. They weren't raised in Canaan like I was. They didn't get my education like I got from my forefathers. They're dressing like Egyptians. These are strange people, strangers to me. But what did he understand? He understood there's an essential message that supersedes and can cut right through any of the externalities. It's not about the form, it's about the content. If when Jews came to America, they said, if the rabbi can't speak Yiddish, he's not a rabbi. If my grandson can't speak Yiddish, he can't be a real Jew. If he doesn't look like this or look like that, if he doesn't speak with a certain kind of an accent, then he just can't be one of us. If we would have said that, Judaism would have ended at the shores of America. But people understood that there are many ways to be Jewish. You could be a doctor and a lawyer and whatever you want to be, and you could still keep Shabbos, observe kosher, and everything else, because the externalities are not the key. Some generations like to have long hair. Some generations like to have short hair. Some generations have wide ties and thin ties. Some like to dress in bohemian style. Some like to dress formally. And these things are not important. And when we can bridge the gap is when we can put aside the externalities and get to the essence, the eternal Judaism, the internal Judaism, which is the eternal Judaism. These values of family, values and love and devotion and commitment, these are things that don't depend on a particular hairstyle or what kind of colored tie you wear and what country you live in and what generation you're in. So we look out the vast landscape of Jewish life today, whether in America or in Israel or beyond, we could easily turn to Jews who are less affiliated, less connected, and we could say, well, they don't look like us, they don't seem like us, they'll never understand, they don't understand my language, they don't speak my language. It's hopeless. On Pesach, we try to fix the power of speech. We try to imagine and dream of a world in which we could communicate what we're so passionate about, what we love so much about Judaism, to the next generation, to others around us. That's our commitment. That's our passion. Let us hope that in this Pesach, it can be a Pesach, that it can be a mouth that opens, not just to blabber on, but to actually reach the ears and the hearts and the minds of others, that we can bridge the gap of generations, cultural gap, experiential gap, and communicate the beauty and power and value of Judaism to enrich our lives, to deepen our lives, and ultimately to connect with God. Thank you for joining us here at Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee. Discuss the various elements of Pesach. We have playlists with many, many other videos about Pesach and so many other holidays and parshiot and weekly portions. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.